Hey everyone, welcome to the show Off the Record. I'm here today with Jordi Torras, the CEO and founder of Inbenta, a new class of enterprise AI and semantic search technology for e-commerce and customer support. Jordi, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Well, Aram, thank you so much for having me here. I'm really glad you invited me.
No problem. So the first question I always like to ask is always different, but it's some sort of icebreaker question. So I remember speaking to you and seeing that you went to Harvard and you did a program there. What was your experience? Was it? Do you think it's overrated? In 2022.
Oh boy, so that was maybe I don't know 12 years ago. So that was back, and it was not like a long program. It was a short education program. It was a program called education for professional service or managing professional services companies.
Hmm.
That was the kind of the name of the program. So I had the opportunity to be there, and I gotta tell you, and I've been in other higher education. I also had my MBA, of course, college, but that's my personal experience. These guys there are rock and roll stars. That I can tell you. They're it was every class was magic, and these guys know what they do. They are probably paid very well because otherwise they would be somewhere else. But my experience being there is that these teachers are really something. It's absolutely worth um, listening to their stories, how they deal with a class, how they interact with the students. So for me, it was a 10/10. But
Okay.
maybe now people say it's overrated. I don't know. That's my experience, as I said, from 12 years ago.
Perfect. Perfect. And would you say that there's any for anybody listening? I don't know on the show. Would you ever say to anybody that it might not make sense to go there, or is it like you think it's can be applicable to anybody generally?
Yeah. In my particular case, it was a very condensed program. As I said, very specialized in leading professional services, which is a very special topic and very specialized. You are leading a professional services company, right?
That's right.
Now I'm more in the software as a service space, but back in time I was also in the professional services kind of leadership role, and that helped me a lot. That helped me a lot understand the dynamics, the psychology, the economics, everything related to that. And to me, it really helped me a lot. And it was pricey. I think, well, it was a condensed program, so after all, it was not that expensive if you look at the value that I got out of it. So it's for
Hmm.
me, it's a totally a go.
For you is a total go. Perfect. Okay.
Yeah,
Um, so through your time building in Benta, and we'll talk about it a bit later in the episode. What are some of the lessons over the last 10 years that you wish you could have told yourself back then about how to start your company, how to focus, how to manage it?
yeah, absolutely. So in my particular case, right, and then we have said that already. I transitioned from being a professional services, like a consulting business, into a software as a service. And as such, coming from consulting, my number one obsession was the customer. Right, customer is first. Customer knows better. The customers is the most important thing, and maybe it is. But then when you transition to software, then product is when it gets a lot more important, and then you find yourself in this dichotomy on saying, okay, what should I now do? Invest in making that project for this specific customer successful, or invest this energy in making my product better. And I think that one of the lessons is well, if you have your product ready, then projects are going to be easier. So it's hard. It's a hard decision sometimes to say, okay, I have talent where I dedicate this talent in making my product better, or especially in the space of B2B,
Hmm.
doing great projects with my customers. And if I could come back and I say, hey, Jordi, concentrate more on the product because that's what matters. That's don't worry much about that customer that you have today, which is very important, but think about the customers that you don't have. And this is when the vision on the product side is more important.
Interesting. And so, what was the what was like the main driver for you when you went and pivoted from being a professional service company to being a SaaS company? Like, what was the motivation there?
Well, I would say it's for me that's a dream come true, right? I've been this I've been born and raised in Barcelona, right? So coincidentally, where you are now, right?
Right.
And I've been studied computer science, so I've been in computers for a long time, and in all my professional career, technology comes from the U.S. and then Europe consumes that technology, right? It's been like that for a long time. But then software as a service broke all that and say, hey, now anyone can build a successful technology company. So we saw that opportunity. We saw that we were solving problems for our customers that would make sense to productize. And then I thought, hey, that's my opportunity. It's now or never. Now's my opportunity to jump out of the consulting, which is what I have been doing for a long time, into a new realm called product, right, and software as a service, which I saw back then as a paradise because, as you know, right, paradise is always somewhere else, right? So I said, well, consulting is you have to work every day to get your dollar paid, and you never build anything. With product, it's amazing. You build a product, and that's it. And then they're going to pay you for that product, and I don't have to do anything, right?
Make some
Of
money in your
course,
sleep, right?
of course is not the case, right? You work a lot, anyways.
Uh,
But yeah, that was my a dream that was able to do by pivoting the company and realizing that what we were doing for our customers was very much product. We could build a product out of it.
and so, I mean, as I know, like right now, I'm running this professional service company. We're a studio, and some of the things I think about if I was to go and create a product of our own is the risk potentially associated of sacrificing maybe like higher revenue coming in through these professional service work to making a bet on a SaaS play. So how did you do that risk tolerance kind of analysis? Because I'm sure you were making lots of revenue as a business at that time. Did you do it as a gradual like rollover so that you could maintain your business, from like a cash flow operation perspective? Like, how did you kind of deal with that?
Yeah, very very good question. In our case, the idea of moving away from professional services into a product, of course, was not a one rush, one night idea, right? It was cooking over time, and basically the final transition out of consulting and into SaaS happened for us around 2010. But before that, what happened in Spain, and I'm talking basically the Spain, right? It was, as you may know, was at that time was a country very much dependent on the real estate industry, right? So
Mhm.
there was a crisis. The crisis that happened in the U.S. by 2007 impacted Spain hard, basically 1 year later, and there was a big crisis. So what was happening is all these consulting operations, well, there was less work and therefore less professional services, less revenue, and therefore it was the time to take a decision. It's like, should we downsize? Should we basically let people go and adjust the company to this new reality, or use this fantastic talent that we have, keep it, and investing our own cash reserves into building that product, and then as quick as possible try to sell it, right? And that's what we did. Basically, we reinvest our reserves, our cash position that we had accumulated during our consulting time. And but it was a jump. You're totally right. It's you say, well, if that doesn't go well, it's going to be a lot of money
Hmm.
lost. So you are totally right. That's it's a jump of faith that you have to do. And again, right, later on, when you have finally a new customer arrives, it's like, okay, should I ask this engineer that I have that is really good helping with this customer, or should I keep the guy for the company to keep on building the product? And that's when you have the big decision. And as I said, we invested in the product. If I would come back, I would say you have to invest more,
Hmm.
because now I know it works. Of course, that was less clear back then, right?
Yeah. And so, um, when you when this, macro situation was happening in the economy and needed to like change, how much runway did you kind of give yourself, or like how much time did you give yourself as a CEO to determine whether or not it's going to be successful or not? And then my follow-up question would be, when did you then need to go to investors to get some funding to continue like the operation of the business?
So in my case, say what we say is like, okay, what the classic idea of the minimum viable product, right? That's
Mm,
that's the thing. Um, in my case, I would say not an MVP, but a MSP, right? A minimum sellable product, right? Which is what am I going to have to sell this for the first time? And I remember kind of a 1 month after we started building things, there was this one opportunity of one customer, right? So we went there with our USB memories and installing all that, competing with other better established products, and we would say, hey, yes, we have a product we're going to show you. And that was a disaster, right? And we didn't win, of course, because the
mm,
product was buggy. um, but at the same time, I saw, hey, we failed, but we were close to not failing, so we are not that far out. So let's say, okay, maybe 1 month, a couple of guys is too extreme, but 4 or 5 guys for 4 or 5 months, we can have something sellable. We were all about to sell something, right? So I think that in my head it was like a time frame of time
mm.
and number of resources, and say, okay, this is what I'm going to dedicate. After that time, if these sales are not materialized, I don't know. We have to do like B2C, like back to consulting.
I've never heard that before. B2C like consulting. I'm like thinking, where is he going with this B2C, business to consumer? That's good.
Back to consulting.
I love it. I love it. It's like when all else fails, go back to consulting.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. No, very interesting. No, thanks for sharing with that. Yeah, because it's always a tricky thing, right? You're kind of cannibalizing, existing business. If you're a professional service company going to software, and so I'm always curious to see how people do it. And then so from that time when you kind of like had that minimal syllable product, what other validation did you need to do or to prove to yourself to then warrant going and raising money to then either scale out the business, or hire more people to like go maybe up market or whatever?
Yeah. So also in our peculiar case, right? We are not Silicon Valley startup surrounded by money. It's not been our case, right? We're talking about well, the city, Barcelona, right? So it's
Mm,
now there is an entrepreneur and startup ecosystem, but not much back then. So we first went international. So we're starting operations in France
mm,
because it's around the corner, and then in Brazil because of similarities with the language. So these were our first international operations, and the way we structured that was with kind of a also entrepreneurship. So I found of these great guys who had like the idea of starting a business in another country. So I say, okay, we're gonna now you have Inbenta in Spain. I'm gonna be the Jordi in France, right? So
Mm.
that's with kind of almost entrepreneurial spirit. Is that how we started our first steps for internationalization, right? And then I said, "Oh boy, that's now next step is going to the U.S." And then with my family, we came here. That's now 11 years ago in Silicon Valley to start operations here, and then we start selling customers, and then is when investors are interested, when they see something, when they see there's activity and there is a validation based on actual customers and brands. And again, right, is another irony here is you want these big brands, right? You don't want just a bar here and a shop there. You want a cool, well-known enterprise as customer. So you fight for that. At the same time, they drag your resources as well, right? Because as everybody, their life is also complicated, so they have their own requirements, and they will kind of use the product, but also use your capacity. In our case, that came from our time as consultants, as professional
Hmm.
services, right? So they say, okay, I have both, have the product, but these guys can tweak the product in a way that serves me.
Right.
And then you enter into this kind of a sometimes contradiction, and as you said, right, cannibalization, right? It's like, okay, now what it happens is I have two guys in a product and two guys working for customer X. Does that make sense? um, and so it's all about the strategy and trying to say, okay, what is the kind of product that I need to have, and indeed is it's always this duality is like what I put the resources, because irony is when you have these customers, then is when investors are interested, and then is when you have more funds to invest more in the product. So it's at some point you have to jump, let's say, over a cliff, and trying to get some customers to get some capital, and being able to build yourself. That's what is called bootstrap, right? It comes from the expression of putting yourself up by just pulling your boots, right?
Bare
It's
boots, yeah.
bootstrap.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's impossible. Exactly. That's impossible. So
Yeah.
so that's what all about the entrepreneurship is. It's kind of doing some kind of impossible thing, right? Is with no money, get a product that you can sell that will then be able to get some funding to build the real thing.
I want to ask you something you mentioned, which is dealing with the paradigm of having large customers come in and request or dictate certain features to be built in their product roadmap. How do you, as a CEO, or like if your product leader, is assessing that to see like to justify doing it or not?
Yeah, that now today this morning I have this call with the team. It's all the time that, because on one hand you want what you want to build, right? It's like, oh, that would be great, because you feel there is a gap, you feel customers asking for this feature, right? And you see that the market has something but not as cool as you could build.
Hmm.
And then on the other hand, you have this customer who is telling you, well, I need this and that. And both things have risks. So not building this new feature into in the product might mean not being able to compete in the future, and not building this for that particular customer might mean losing the customer, and the dreaded churn, right? That's kind of the word that every SaaS company is
Fears.
terrified about. It's like, oh, no, no churn, no churn. Well, guess what? Some customers might churn if using the product is just not convenient enough, and they might go to another customer. So it's indeed it's complex, and it requires consensus as well, vision, and it's not easy, not easy for any company.
So consensus from the team, vision from like the leadership. Anything else you would say?
Yeah, probably you have to also build a product in a way that is, and we learned that along the way, right? In a flexible way, and imagine that the company is divided into two companies: the product company and the professional services.
Mm,
So, so what you need to have is that your product must be open, must have APIs. They must be well documented. So the consulting team or the professional service team can build other stuff on top of that, can integrate that with other technologies. And you know, the APIs and all that, everybody now is obviously around that, but it was not that obvious at the beginning. Is more now. There are startups that they're just offer an API. They don't
mm,
have much more than that, right? But you know, at some point we had to have this idea of saying, okay, we need all of our product must be accessed by APIs, and then these other guys, which happen to be us as well, will be consuming these APIs, but in a way that is well documented, and in theory, anyone, the customer, a third party, another consulting business would be able to do it too. So
okay.
so that's been kind of the idea on making sure that we have the product with enough APIs so we can also integrate that with other things, build other stuff, maybe for one customer only, and then yes, you have to have your professional services organization there. That ideally they and that's another important thing, right? Is if you have the if in order to sell your product, you have to give your professional services away for free.
Yeah.
That's also a symptom that your product needs working, right? So ideally, if you sell your product and then on top of that you charge for your professional services, then is when you can have this balance.
Okay. Oh, great. Thank you. I'm going to shift gears a bit to something we previously talked about. I wanted to ask some questions about that. Um, so, in your experience to date, with this company and maybe something prior, I wanted to ask you, how do you go about hiring people? Um, when you started off to kind of what you do now in terms of like a process, because I'm sure you've learned a lot in terms of like how to hire, who to hire, when to hire. Are there any kind of hidden secrets that help you kind of navigate into like who you bring on?
Oh boy, if I had these secrets, man, that would be amazing. What I have learned over the time is, you first of all is you have to hire people that are better than you. That's the first thing. That it seems now obvious, right? But it was not back in time when I started as entrepreneur. I had this idea that I was the best anyways, right? So I just need people who would help doing things that I'm doing every day. But they are kind of, I need someone to do this thing because it's boring, I don't need it, whatever, right? And that's not the way it works. What you need is to hire those who will do things that you cannot do, and
Mm,
they're better than you at their particular job. So that's the big lesson here: is how can you make sure that you find these guys that are better than you, because by definition you don't know because you are not good enough, right? So that's
yeah.
I've learned that the hard way. At Inbenta, I have, for example, the first employee that I hired was a guy out of college. Well, today he's a COO, so that was a 12 out of 10.
Yeah.
One of the first hires is today the CTO, so another great hire. But along the way, of course, other hiring, especially when you start, raising money and hiring executives, that is a really complicated time, because it's when you need to really hire folks that will take care of teams that prior you were, I was taking care. So that's
Mm.
yeah, I've been through all kind of horrid stories of owing the whole thing really really bad. And lessons, is paying attention, check references, and don't rush. Take time. Make sure that whoever you are considering, you are as sure as possible that working together is going to add value. And there's no sorry for that, Aram. I don't have any secret pill or anything like that. Just maybe take more time, talk to references, try to imagine how this put yourself in the shoes of people that have worked before, and still maybe the percentage of good hires is going to be still painfully low.
And how long? I mean, with those key leadership role hires that you went through, how long did you? How long were you willing to wait to hire the right people? Because you mentioned that it was difficult. You might have rushed it and things like that. Um, Now, if you were to do it again, how long would you be willing to wait until you bring on the right person?
So, for example, right in 2017, in 2 months, I hired 5 executives. two
Wow. Okay.
months, right? If you look at that now, in 6 months, I have hired one. So
Hmm.
that's kind of the
The
proportion, right?
yeah.
It takes time, and it's yeah. I mean, of course, the sooner the better, but it takes time, and so that's you can see the proportion, right, of time invested now.
Yeah. And so earlier you mentioned that when you went from Barcelona into these markets, you mentioned France and Brazil. You said that when you went to France, you found like a French version of you to run that market, right?
Yes.
What was like the key characteristics you looked for in that individual who opened up that market?
All right, I'll tell you the story of France. It's Luke. Luke is the name of the guy. So this teacher from EADA. EADA is a business school in Barcelona. You might
Yeah.
you might know it. It's
Yeah.
Escuela something something. It's a business school, and I was teaching there strategy and innovation as a part-time teacher, right? And very part-time, like I don't know, maybe a week, a year, or something like that, right?
Wow. Okay.
And then one day, one of the teachers calls me and say, "Hey, how are you? I think I have an interesting student here. I think you." And I was surprised because the guy never called me before or after that, right? So I say, yeah, let's have a conversation with this. And it happened to be a young guy who was French, and that for some reason decided to study business in Barcelona. And he also was looking for a job. And his original idea was to look for something in Spain, right?
Hmm.
So what I said is, hey, for language reasons, it's going to be very hard for you to be a project manager or some other role in Spain because language is complicated, right? So yes, we can use English, yeah, we can, but French, but it's your the way you speak Spanish and Catalan, it's rusty, right? So it's gonna be hard. However, what we could do is you work here in Barcelona, and from here you start opening the market in France. And there was no WhatsApp in that time. It looks incredible, right? But it was another time. So we had the office. We had a red phone, a phone that was literally red, and then that was a phone that was a French phone number. So everybody knew that phone was ringing. If you pick up the phone, somebody speaking French is going to talk to you. So everybody was like, "Oh no, no, not me." So Lucas started prospecting from Barcelona, and boy, the guy killed it. So at some point, Luke says, "Hey, it's been fun. Now, I need to come back with my girlfriend. So we're going back to France." And I was like, "What are you going to do in France?" "I don't know. Have to look for a job." So I thought, "I have an idea for you. Let's build this together." And that's how the story of Inbenta in France started. And it's been, you know, really big companies. It's an amazing team still nowadays there, and all because of that teacher calling one day.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy. That's
Yeah.
great for you for, taking that initiative and, opening up that market with him. So, uh,
So it's not like I was looking for something. It's like I
uh
had the opportunity to
yeah,
find
yeah.
someone. So
No.
yeah,
Worked out
that's the
perfectly.
story. Yeah, like more taking the opportunity.
Uh, just a couple more questions. You when we chatted last time, you had this interesting saying that I wanted to bring up in this conversation, which was say what you think what you say.
Yeah.
Wanted
I
to
don't know if
expand on
that's coined by somebody else. If it is free, I'll take it.
that. So, what does that mean, and how do you apply it in real life?
Yeah, it's about honesty, right? And transparency. You have to be honest all the time, and transparent to employees, to investors, to customers, to everybody. At the same time, when the word brutally honest, right? So you have to think, how can I be honest without the brutally part of it, right? And this is when you think, okay, what is the effect on the person that I'm talking to, that what I'm going to say will have, right? Because you cannot unsay things. That's another lesson, right? You can say anything, but you cannot unsay anything. So that's about thinking. Okay, so I know what I want to say. Now let's think how I say it, because sometimes depending on how you say things, the effect is going to be something that then you might regret, right? So that's my saying here is say what you think, meaning be honest, but right before you say it is think what you say, because there's
Mm,
no way back once you have said something. Right? So that's the principle that I try to apply. And then there is this common sense is like, hey, it's better to that's if you live in Barcelona, right, Aram?
yeah.
Okay, so there is something that people say there, that is better to get red once than get green 10 times.
I've
which
never heard that
which
before.
basically yes, which basically means you get red once when I say, yeah, I screwed with that, I'm sorry, and you get red because you're ashamed, right?
Mm,
But if you don't say it, right, and you try to hide, or you lie, or you say something different, that's gonna go after you, and then you're gonna in a much worse way. And when your face is gonna get green, because like, oh boy, that's really bad. So it's better to say, get red once than get green 10 times. That's kind of the saying in cultural the popular
I love that.
culture. And that's I apply that because it's 100% true.
Yeah. No, definitely. You could really see people, really come out for who they are when it's very not
Exactly,
honest and
exactly. Because if you don't, then what happens is the what I and now sadly, we have all the war, right, everywhere. But
yeah.
I was mentioning the Chernobyl effect, right, which is, the disaster happens. Uh, Boss calls. What happened? An explosion. Is it bad? No, not that bad. Okay, the boss of the boss. What happened? A little explosion. Nothing to care about. And then goes up, and then goes to Gorbachev. And what happened? Nothing. Nothing. Everything is fine. If you have an organization that fears, right? An organization that
Yes.
that fears, and they say, I'm not going to say that. That's they're going to kill me if that. So in order to have an organization without the Chernobyl effect, you need to work on this culture. Is hey, something happened, let's address it. Nobody's going to go after it. I mean, everybody makes mistakes. It could be you, it could be somebody else, but um, better get red now, right? That literally green because of radiation 1 month
Yeah.
later, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
No. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. A last question, and I always like asking this at the end is there anything you want to share to the audience about your experience in entrepreneurship that we didn't have time to, that you want to make sure you get out?
Yes, I was thinking the other day, right? I have three kids, right? And they are the youngest is starting college, the oldest already came out of college, and we had this conversation, and they looking for jobs and whatnot. And what I said is like, hey, or you could start a business, and all three were looking at each other like, oh no, boy, we have seen this at
Uh-huh.
home for a long time, and probably they see the glory and also the misery around, right? So my still my advice is, if you feel that you can do it, just go ahead. Which doesn't mean that you will succeed. Actually, most of entrepreneurs fail at one time or another. But just go ahead, bootstrap, do the impossible. It's
Yeah.
fun. It's great.
I think it's I think a lot of people think they could be entrepreneurs, and maybe they can with like the right kind of like mindset. But I just feel like at times it's like you're kind of operate and are cut from like a different cloth, you know? Like you got to be really like willing to take risks that other people would never even consider. So it's very true. It's a tough thing. Like I see so many entrepreneurs trying to get started because they think it's the cool thing to do or it's easy to do. That's the worst one.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
I
that's
could. It sounds easy. I'm like, what are you
you
thinking?
know, and you know that and what is your story? How did you become entrepreneur?
How? Um,
Now we are
I
in
think a
reverse
big,
mode.
yeah, reverse one. I love it. Honestly, I think my entrepreneurship kind of path was really um, initiated because of my dad, because he was an entrepreneur for most of his life, and I saw the difficulties and I saw like the joys of it. And then I spent a lot of time with him with the on the business side of things, like trying to understand how he does things and learn. And I just got really fascinated by it. Um, and so when I was thinking, what do I do? Like for me, it was like kind of like no other option I could consider, right? Like entrepreneurship or business is what I would do. Um, and then so right after when I was finishing even my entrepreneurship degree, I took a my first stab in entrepreneurship for 3 years in a company I created, and I learned more in those 3 years than I did in my entire
Wow.
university program. Realized how hard it is because like I failed miserably, and it really got me thinking. I'm like, okay, how do I do better next time? And I think the driver there was like, okay, always like, what's next? What's like, what can I learn? What can I do better? And I just don't see that challenge and like many other things in industry. So that's kind of how I got into it, I would say.
Nice.
Um,
Nice. Thanks for
and
sharing that.
Yeah, no problem. And yeah, no, I know when I think about it. Thank you for asking the question. Actually, nobody asked me that question. That's good. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate it. So yeah, I
Well, you're an
mean,
amazing entrepreneur. You have your own company now, living in another country. It's hard, and I know it's hard because I've done these things. It's just the countries are not the same.
yeah,
But
yeah, we kind of flipped regions.
exactly, exactly.
Um, I think one other time I'd want to do an episode potentially around is like being an entrepreneur with like 3 kids because we both have 3 kids and like
That's right. That's right.
oh my god, like the reality of it is just so different than what I could have foreseen it would do or take out of me. But no regrets at the end of the day.
No,
What's
no, no. Absolutely not.
Cool, Jordi. This was fantastic. We'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much for your time today and joining us on the show. I really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely, Aram. Thank you again for inviting me. It's been a lot of fun, and I've learned a lot already.